chair Gender and Women's Studies. Thank you again for joining us for this year's Raise Your Voice Symposium. Here's a reminder to take care of yourself, take breaks, grab snacks as needed. Before we begin our student panel, we welcome Kayli Zelinske-Mader to perform her original poem, Ode to Be a Woman. I'm going to go ahead and introduce everyone first here. Kayli is a junior majoring in Gender and Women's Studies with minors in Justice Studies and Political Science at St. Mary's. She's an active student leader, serving as the Director of Internal Affairs for the Student Government Association, Secretary of the Residence Hall Association, and Vice President of College Democrats. Passionate about advocacy and policy, she plans to pursue graduate studies in public administration and policy, or attend law school to focus on family law. So please come on up here, Kayli.
Thank you, Dr. Rodman, for that introduction. All right, let's go ahead and get started. Ode to Be a Woman. I am who I am. I am a woman facing obstacles every day. I am a tomboy because I wear boy clothes. I'm a slut because I wore a crop top to class. I'm a fake, note to self, don't wear too much makeup unless it's minimal. I'm an ugly duck, wait, so I should wear more makeup? I'm a friend, keeping secrets for those who don't keep mine. I'm a piece of trash because I have a crush on the same person as you. I'm an athlete being told, don't put on too much muscle or you'll look like a boy. I'm a girl counting calories because I don't look like those girls. I'm a follower, doing everything the popular girls do. I'm a sister, trying to be a good role model. I'm a daughter, hoping to do better than my mom did. I'm a new generation, grateful for those who fought for me. I'm a student, struggling to manage my time, make money. I'm a graduate, where do I go from here? I'm an applicant, damn, I should have listed more technical skills. I'm an employee, aspiring to get the same roles as my male counterparts. I'm a coworker, competing for a pay raise. I'm a manager, not respected like those before me. I'm a survivor, forever blamed for what happened to me that night. I'm a patient, yet new laws prevent my bodily autonomy. I'm a young woman. Am I ready to be a mother? I'm an anxious wreck, as I fear of losing my rights. I'm a leader, but they don't want to see me lead. I'm a feminist, I guess I hate men. I'm an ally because people are people. I'm a bitch because I stand up for myself and others. I'm a mother, teaching my girls how to stay strong and be kind. I'm a woman, fighting for my rights, my friends' rights, and my girls' rights. I am a woman, fighting for the right to simply live.
The next panel consists of three current students, Kaitlyn, Giselle, and Phoenix. Kaitlyn is a senior majoring in sociology and gender and women's studies with minors in social work and justice studies. After graduation, she plans on attending graduate school to pursue a master's of social work. Here at St. Mary's, Kaitlyn is a class gift campaign co-chair. She also serves on the Donor Challenge Student Committee and the Student Subcommittee for the President's Committee on Sexual Violence Prevention. Giselle Martinez is a psychology and gender and women's studies major with a sociology minor at St. Mary's College, class of 2026. She serves as president of the Student Diversity Board, working to foster inclusivity on campus, and is a student worker with the Division of Equity and Inclusion. Outside academics, Giselle is a site leader at Our Lady of the Road, supporting individuals experiencing homelessness. She also interned with Community Does It, a Dallas-based nonprofit, to promote equitable public health access. Giselle is committed to making a positive impact through leadership and service. Phoenix McClellan is a St. Mary's senior. They major in both gender and women's studies and history and minor in religious studies and theology. She is a BAVO Student Advisory Committee co-chair for the Empowerment Committee, as well as one of the 2 student ambassadors for Callisto Vault. Their goals for the future include eventually becoming a historian, and being able to continue their research regarding gender and sexuality. Please welcome our panelists to present their research.
Hello, my name is Phoenix. The title of my project was Sex, Beauty, and Power: How Misogynistic Portrayals of Sex and Beauty Online Impact the Gender Expression of Young women. My thesis for this research was as follows. The current state of both sexually explicit content and beauty-related content online is problematic as they contribute to online misogyny in the form of women being exposed to aggressive displays of power over women at the hands of men, internalized misogyny, and the belief that they must conform to certain standards in order to be accepted by society. It is also possible for both sets of content to act as catalysts for one another, leading these issues to worsen over time. My argument was supported by a number of different sources, but the ones that I consider the most valuable are the 9 interviews that I personally conducted with a variety of students from the dry campus community. All of the participants were women between the ages of 18 to 22 years old who grew up being exposed to these issues in one way or another. I would like to share some of what my participants had to say during their interviews. The first interview participant whose experience I will be sharing is Ophelia. Ophelia has noticed several women being harassed on social media platforms. She recognized that these women are attacked for being sexual while not being considered attractive enough, as well as attacked for not being sexual if they are perceived as extremely attractive. In her understanding, it seems that beauty is often considered synonymous with being sexually available and consenting to sexualization in online spaces. These issues also affected her own participation in online spaces and her relationship with her hobbies, as her presence and appearance were enough to make many men feel as if they were entitled to her sexuality. This led to her being sent sexually suggestive content as well as outwardly explicit content, which led to her leaving these spaces and no longer participating in one of her hobbies and group settings. While not being directly tied to Ophelia's story, the tweet that I've chosen to include on this slide serves as an example of the type of harassment and entitlement to women's bodies present in online spaces. This tweet was posted by Nick Fuentes within days of the 2024 presidential election. The tweet reads, "Your body, my choice, forever." While this phrase was likely not used against Ophelia due to the fact that the tweet is more recent than her own experiences, I chose to include it as it serves as an example of the misogyny and objectification many women like Ophelia face while participating in a variety of online spaces. The second participant I would like to include is Viola. Viola recounted a time in her life when kids entering middle school had already been exposed to rigid beauty standards, and I teased her for not following the rules of beauty. As she recalled this event, she described it in this way. "I remember the first time I was shamed for having body hair because I was 10 or 11. I didn't shave my legs yet because I was a child. Then one of the girls was like, 'Oh, your legs are so hairy.' Viola and her mother's response was for her to learn how to shave her legs instead of learning how to embrace the hair. In a similar fashion, she'd been made to feel as if she was being forced, or is going to be forced, to conform to beauty standards in potentially sexual scenarios. The need to be perceived as completely physically perfect, which in these scenarios, the definition of perfection provided was synonymous with hairless, made her feel as if many men would prefer if women were to keep their prepubescent bodies. In both interviews, Viola and Ophelia made it clear that the goal, intentional or otherwise, is often to make women feel insecure about themselves and to convince them that their value is dependent on how they are perceived by men. In many ways, these issues are only worsening, and there is a significant possibility that they will continue to worsen over time, as there is an increased acceptance of extremism. While conducting my research, I came across some examples of degrading phrases that have had a recent increase in popularity that illustrate this growing acceptance. While some phrases, such as "get back to the kitchen," have been consistently popular in both online and offline spaces, its popularity has become more prominent in recent memory. Similar phrases, like the previously mentioned "your body, my choice," in addition to repeal the 19th, have also become popular as the attitudes of consumers become more extreme and their opinions about women get worse. Not only have the attitudes of consumers become more extreme, but the content itself is also becoming more extreme in order to satisfy growing markets. In the same breath, women who attempt to reclaim any power in these situations are also dismissed, ridiculed, or experience more direct forms of violence. I ended my research by thinking about what we can do to prevent these issues from getting worse. I first recommend placing an emphasis on teaching media literacy to help people understand how to identify harmful themes and ideologies online. I also recommend the teaching of porn literacy. Porn literacy combines media literacy with comprehensive sex education so as to focus on identifying the problems that separate pornography from reality. This would help people identify issues of consent in pornography This would help people identify issues of consent and whether or not certain scenarios are realistic. My primary recommendation, though, is to foster more safe spaces for people to discuss these highly sensitive topics without the fear of being judged for what they may or may not consume online. Even if the only thing that we can do about it is talk, that will still be a step in the right direction to begin combating the still worsening legacy of the problem.
Okay, yes. Hi everyone, I'm Giselle, and I'll be exploring digital activism and feminist efforts in addressing sexual violence against women. Specifically, I'll be focusing on the Me Too movement. To start, my thesis is that digital activism transforms feminist action and discourse, especially when addressing violence against women. While digital platforms amplify the voices and experiences of marginalized individuals, such as women of color and trans people of color, they can also oversimplify or generalize these experiences, limiting the diversity and complexity of feminist responses. Using Kimberly Crenshaw's intersectionality framework, I argue that digital activism strengthens women's struggles, but also complicates them, challenging traditional frameworks and necessitating a reevaluation of their effectiveness in confronting violence against women. Before diving into the Me Too movement, it's important to first understand Kimberly Crenshaw's concept of intersectionality, which provides a necessary framework for analyzing the complexities of digital activism. Crenshaw's intersectionality framework challenges feminism to move beyond a one-size-fits-all understanding of oppression. It acknowledges how multiple forms of marginalization, such as race, gender, class, and other identity markers, intersect, shaping unique experiences of violence. Crenshaw argues that considering these intersections is essential to understanding women's struggles and to creating a more inclusive activism that gives a platform to those most affected by systematic injustice. By adopting this lens, movements can foster more equitable and representative platforms, ultimately pushing towards transformative social change. With this intersectional foundation in mind, let's turn to the Me Too movement. So, the Me Too movement, founded by Tarana Burke in 2006, is a powerful example of how digital activism can amplify and complicate feminist struggles. Burke's original vision was to create a space for marginalized survivors of sexual violence, particularly women of color, where they could share their stories and find solidarity with each other. This vision aligns with Crenshaw's intersectionality, highlighting how race, class, gender, and other factors intersect to shape women's experiences of violence. However, when the Me Too movement gained global attention in 2017 through Alyssa Milano's viral tweet, the movement's narrative shifted. Mainstream media, which is often dominated by white upper-class voices, co-opted the movement. These platforms, driven by the interests of large media corporations, tend to prioritize stories that are easily marketable and align with the experiences of those in power, which reinforces a narrow mainstream narrative. As a result, the focus moved towards the experiences of white women in Hollywood, sidelining the voices of women of color. In doing so, the struggles of these women, particularly those at the intersections of race and class, were often overlooked in favor of a more generalized narrative of gender oppression. This shift highlights a key challenge of digital activism, that while it can amplify marginalized voices, If those voices are not kept at the forefront of the conversation, the focus can narrow, oversimplifying the diversity of experiences that truly need to be heard. It is worth noting, though, that this shift sparked frustration from marginalized communities who felt that the movement, again, was being overshadowed and their voices were being pushed aside. Nikki Kendall, an author, activist, and cultural critic, tweeted, "A Black woman created Me Too. White women adopted it, and now Black women who speak up are undermined by whiteness." Another user, Kieran, responded to discussions about Me Too's feature by stating, "Toronto Bird, a Black civil rights activist, started the Me Too movement in 2006. When you ask this question, you erase her work, and all of the women of color who did the work for over a decade in the Me Too movement, on before 2017, when Anthem publicly accused Weinstein." Bishop Thomas Swan also criticized the movements for selective focus, writing, "The deafening silence of the Me Too movement celebrities, in the case of Centoya Brown, is indicative of what happens when white women gentrify a movement that was started to advocate for Black women, victims of sexual violence. If her complexion had been different, they'd be outraged." This frustration within the movement underscores how digital platforms can inadvertently reinforce dominant, often exclusionary narratives. Without an intentional commitment to intersectionality, these spaces risk replicating the very systems of erasure and marginalization they aim to dismantle, making it essential to center the most vulnerable voices throughout the movement. To conclude, digital activism has transformed feminist action by providing a platform to amplify the voices of women affected by violence. Movements like Me Too have raised critical awareness, but have also exposed the limitations of digital platforms, particularly when it comes to oversimplifying complex struggles and reinforcing dominant exclusionary narratives. To build a more inclusive movement, it's essential to amplify these marginalized voices and ensure that diverse experiences are at the forefront of the conversation. This means creating a space for voices from different racial, socioeconomic, cultural, sexual, and gender identities. Thank you.
Hi everyone, my name is Kaitlyn, and my research is titled "Not All Men, But Every Woman: Rape Culture, Commercialization, and the Me Too Movement's Fight for Justice." Before I started my presentation, I wanted to clarify an important distinction between the Me Too movement and the hashtag Me Too movement. The term Me Too was founded by Tanara Burke in 2006 as an activist initiative aimed at supporting African American women who were survivors of sexual violence. In 2017, actress Alyssa Milano tweeted, "If you've ever been sexually harassed or assaulted, write Me Too" as a response to this tweet. That tweet is what sparked the online Me Too movement. For the purpose of this research, I will be focusing on the hashtag Me Too movement while also acknowledging Burke's contributions. The thesis for this research goes as follows. While Me Too has empowered survivors and created conversation, its impact is limited by a culture where businesses can profit off of sexual assaults and a society built upon distrust and a general contempt for women. Online activism, persistent backlash, and the commercialization done by companies all shape the sustainability of the Me Too movement, revealing both progress and gaps in addressing rape culture. The first piece of evidence in this research revolves around rape culture. Rape has been a complex subject in America as it was first defined in 1929 as the carnal knowledge of a female forcibly and against her will. This definition at the time excluded all men and survivors of other forms of sexual assault. The Department of Justice didn't update their definition until 2012, and the widening of this definition meant that an estimated 40% of rapes were left out of official FBI statistics from the previous year alone. More recently, the past election cycle brought up a lot regarding rape on social media. For example, the phrase "your body, my choice" was posted by a far-right influencer named Nick Fuentes. In the span of 2 days, this phrase had a 4,600% increase on social media, and the phrase has been viewed more than 90 million times and reposted more than 35,000 times, and those numbers were accurate as of November of last year, so I would assume they're only higher now. During the week of the 2024 presidential election, posts talking about the repeal of the 19th Amendment surged 663% on the platform X. This surge in posts illustrates how digital platforms can both This fight not only the Me Too movement has done a substantial job of bringing attention to issues of sexual harassment and assault, but practices such as victim blaming are continuously holding back its progress. The cases of Dr. Christine Blasey Ford and Anita Hill are examples of victim blaming in our society. In 1991, Anita Hill testified during Clarence Thomas's Supreme Court confirmation hearings, accusing him of sexual harassment. She was put through invasive questioning about the encounters she was forced to have. This further emphasizes the societal attitudes that discourage survivors from speaking out. Similarly, in 2018, Dr. Christine Blasey Ford testified against Brett Kavanaugh during his Supreme Court confirmation hearings. Dr. Ford had more public support than Hill did, but it still meant that she was subjected to character tests, specifically from political leaders such as President Trump and members of the general public. Unfortunately, in these cases, and many others just like it, society believes the word of men more often than not. And contrary to what many say, it is not often any longer that rape allegations ruin a man's life. The women seen here on this slide are just a few of the women who responded to the initial tweet, "If you've ever been sexually harassed or assaulted, write Me Too," as a reply to this tweet. Two examples that I chose were Lily Axelroy and Amanda Yenny. The first quote on the slide under Lily was her response, and she tweeted, "Don't think I know a single woman who hasn't been sexually harassed at work, school, or on the street. Most of us have experienced all three." The second quote here was from an interview with NBC. She said that the Me Too movement had inspired her initially, but she had second thoughts, specifically after seeing President Trump mock Christine Blasey Ford's testimony. Amanda Yenny tweeted, #MeToo. I've been fired from jobs for not sleeping with the boss, fired for not letting customers grab me, groped, obscured photographs without my knowledge, kissed without permission, and more. It sucks thinking about this stuff. In the second quote, she talks about her experience worrying about being attacked, whether at work or simply just walking to her farm. And these two women were no different than the thousands of others. In 2017, Dove launched a marketing strategy that consisted of limited edition versions of the bottles the body wash came in. Each soap bottle was designed to represent a different body type, and they called it the Real Beauty Bottles. And although Dove aimed to spark a conversation about body positivity, consumers recognized the campaign as a marketing strategy aimed at Dove getting to sell more products. This reinforces the idea that while Me Too has empowered survivors and initiated dialogue, the underlying profit-driven motives in our culture continue to undermine sustained, meaningful change. Gillette's advertisement campaign was titled, "We Believe the Best Men Can Be." This ad challenged traditional ideas of masculinity, encouraging men to rise above harmful behaviors like bullying, harassment, and aggression. It highlights positive actions and behaviors that define a better version of masculinity. Some men took to social media to express their disapproval of the company's decision. One user tweeted, "Gillette has made it clear they do not want the business of masculine men." The news outlet BBC reported that comments on the initial advertisement video were largely negative, with viewers saying that they will never buy Gillette products again, or that the ad was feminist propaganda. And so in conclusion, the Me Too movement has sparked conversations about sexual harassment, assault, and rape culture, challenging systematic inequalities and social norms. Despite dealing with backlash and commodification, the Me Too movement still remains today. Although the election of leaders accused of sexual misconduct highlights society's dismissal of sexual violence, showing just how slow-moving real change can be. And the legacy has amplified countless survivors' voices, called out societal barriers, and addressed sexual violence, inspired activism that to this day continues to push for reform and justice, and highlighted the need for cultural change to dismantle rape culture.
Thank you so much to our panelists. We definitely have a few minutes if anyone has any questions, if our panelists would like to drag these chairs up.
know, including Kayli, what inspired each of you to research these very specific topics?
I can go first. I have always really enjoyed, as like a sociology major, doing research that consists something to do with media. So I knew I wanted to start there. And I also feel like with everything going on in our world right now, I wanted to do something that felt relevant and also made me feel like I was contributing something, even if it was just educating myself more.
For me, I started this project, or I did this paper because of Dr. Wagner's class, Feminist Theory, and I just had been doing some researching, and I found an article, I can't remember what it was called, just referencing the Me Too movement, and I just decided to look more into it because the Me Too movement, I feel, is just it had such an impact on pop culture and culture in general, so I just looked more into it, and I got really interested in it, and I decided to write my paper onto it, so that's kind of just what inspired this.
I'm just on the internet all the time, just like everyone else is. And I'm constantly seeing these problems pop up, and between being someone super interested in seeing and how like radical ideas spread, and also just wanting to know how the online world impacts the offline world, that was really about it, just personal experience.
Yes. Oh, is this working? I actually ended up writing my poem for a creative writing class last fall semester, and I wanted to write something that was like thought-provoking, especially in the political climate that we've been in for the last few years. So that's a very like brief general answer for my poem and why I wrote it, but I think that it presents narratives that a lot of people tend to avoid thinking about. So yeah, that's a little bit about my poem.
Within your research, did you notice like an influx between like the Me Too movement in comparison to the election? Like was there an influx in social media posts for Me Too in comparison to the election?
I didn't notice anything specifically, I would say, with Me Too, but I looked at a lot of backlash around it, and I did notice that there was a lot more backlash. It almost seemed like the people posting that kind of content just felt more comfortable with it. So like the surge of like your body, my choice, and the repeal of the 19th Amendment. Even though those aren't specifically Me Too, it was kind of the backlash to it.
For me, maybe my Twitter's broken, but whenever I would look up Me Too, it was just really old tweets of more of the time when it was really splurged and out there. I couldn't find much recent tweets, like beyond 2021. So that's me.
Thank you for great presentation, and I have a question for Phoenix and Giselle, and I want to hear about your opinion on the social space, online social media as an alternative platform for feminist movement. I'm asking this because Phoenix, you mentioned in your presentation that we maybe need to cultivate more safe space to discuss sensitive topics. Do you think the online space can be one of those safe space that you are advancing as an alternative solution? And also for Giselle, you in your slides you mentioned that we need to go beyond the hashtag. It means should be able to stand on the street, or you can think there is some alternative way of doing feminist activism still online.
I think using the internet in and of itself as the space to talk about these things, I don't know if I'd necessarily say it's an opportunity for like a safe space unless they're moderated, but it is an option for a space. And I think in general it needs to be talked about everywhere. But I I do recognize maybe sometimes using the internet to talk about issues with the internet can be difficult because of the fact that really anyone can get their hands on it. So I think it's possible, I think it's just difficult.
To answer your question, I definitely do think it needs to move beyond hashtags. I think raising awareness online and having these platforms to at first educate and bring awareness to these issues are so important. I mean, that's how we start the process. But if it doesn't move beyond that, then we don't ever see real world change and real action made. Especially with performative activism, people just saying certain things online and doing nothing in real life. It just kind of keeps the system going without there ever being real change. So.
So you all had heavy topics that you focused on. How did you take care of yourselves as you did your research, worked on the projects?
For me, I really just looked at Twitter and I read a lot of articles on how women of color are often sidelined, and I just have to remember that like there are people actively fighting against or fighting for these women of color to be forefront to the center of these conversations. I mean, I'm doing that right now, just speaking on this. So I think just remembering that people are fighting to combat these issues just kind of helped me when I was doing my analysis and everything.
I think that having a good support system makes a big difference. Phoenix and I actually did our research together for our senior comp project. So I think just looking at similar media and going through the same things together made a big difference.
Can I plead the fifth? Yeah, no, it's basically we're just taking a lot of breaks. Doing the interview specifically was really rough because there was one weekend where I did like 4 of them, pretty back to back. I don't recommend doing that. But after that weekend, like I just kind of crashed for about a week once I made the transcripts and everything. And that was, sometimes all you can do is crash. So, that's okay.
When I was writing my poem, I actually wrote it as like kind of my outlet for what was going on, especially on campus. I wrote it kind of in a time where the non-discrimination policy was just overturned as well. So I felt very passionate that like I needed to bring that topic or that conversation out even in my creative writing class. Thankfully, I felt very safe to do so in that class, in that setting. But yeah, I think just like finding creative ways as outlets to kind of let loose or relax and kind of de-stress in times like that is really important. And yeah.
Maybe time for one more.
This is a question for Phoenix. I really hope it makes sense, but do you see like how that increase in like misogynistic portrayals of like sex and beauty and like I guess harassment kind of correlates to like I guess online threats to like I guess like the trad life movement or like people like getting or people's conception of aging because like I see a lot of like videos on my Twitter page of like people getting like preventive Botox or like their morning shed as a way to like prevent I guess aging. Makes sense.
I'm trying to like, I see where you're getting at, but I'm trying to figure out the way to articulate that in my brain so I can't answer.
Okay.
You're asking about how, are you asking about how I think that those correlate?
If you think those correlate or not.
I mean, I do think that they do correlate, like they definitely all go together. These are all messages that people are getting. Like, girls our age are being told that you don't want to look like you're 30 when you're 30, you want to look 16 when you're 30. Here's everything you should put on your face, and it's always kind of like dystopian and scary. The amount of products they recommend. And it's one of those things where it's like the people you're appealing to isn't yourself or your actual health. It's just other people, typically men. And yeah, like that definitely correlates, and it's definitely one of those things that just continues to be harmful, because why do women get told that they need to continue looking like teenagers whenever they are grown adult women.
Thank you so much for our student presenters and